Good morning. This is Jerald Melberg. I think most of you know that. We're doing things a little differently this morning. Normally we have a coffee and conversation here in the gallery after each of our openings. And as you can see, the room is now empty. We are going to be doing this virtually, and of course we're going to do it with our good friend, Chris Clamp. Before I begin, a couple things I need to say. There's a disclaimer here. My hair and makeup people did not arrive this morning. You're getting me the way I am, and that's just going to have to be the way it is. This is going to be very informal. We have not scripted this. I'd like to bring in my dear friend, Chris Clamp. Chris, are you on?
Hello, everyone. You see,
where do I begin with Chris? He and I have been dear close friends now for 16 years, I think, at least.
Yeah, at least.
We have worked together in many different capacities, including together on the staff here at the gallery, and him as an artist represented by the gallery. This particular new show is your 1, 3, or 4th with us, Chris? 4th? Yeah. And he keeps getting better and better, everyone, but everybody knows that. I'm just going to start in here, Chris. This particular grouping of paintings are each 12 inches square, and you have called them objects as portraits. Are you a portrait painter?
In a strange way, I am. I love figurative painting, and I love portraiture. I have some good friends that are actually portrait artists, and I love it, but I'm very much drawn to the object and still life myself. This series, it kind of came about last summer whenever I was, before last summer when I was preparing for my residency at the McCall Center. I wanted to produce a small body of work that would consist of several paintings instead of just spending that 9-week residency or however long it was working on like 2 paintings. I wanted to have several, so I wanted to simplify it. That's why it became smaller, just 12-inch square paintings, and I decided to do single object works. But as I started to think more and more about the series that I wanted to do, I started to realize how important the objects were that I wanted to paint. And I started to think about people that were around me, because there were a lot of people in my life that were either no longer with me, or friends that I had that had also lost someone. And I started to think about how there can be something about someone that's left that they have used a lot. And I use the example of a coffee mug, of a dear friend or family member that might have something that they use every day, like this morning ritual of a coffee mug. Exactly. And whenever, let's say, something happens and this person is no longer with us, sometimes you see that mug, and every time you see that mug, you think of that person. So I decided to kind of expand upon that idea, because you could see something like this object, and it is a portrait of that person just as much as if you painted their face.
Do you think that sometimes when you would do a painting of one of these objects, are you thinking about a specific person while you're making it, or does a specific person maybe lead you toward an object?
All of that. Some of the paintings, there were specific objects that did belong to my grandfather, or my grandmother, or someone like that. But some of them, it was like the object was of a memory, something that I wanted to kind of capture that I remembered. And then some of the objects that are in the show are things that someone had given me. You know, they said, "Oh, I think you would like this,"
Yes.
and it represented maybe their story, which was kind of fun too.
Well, I'd like to go back for a second to what you said just a moment ago. Um, I know that family is enormously important to you, and the history of your family and how some of these objects and your family intertwine. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in South Carolina called Leesville, South Carolina. It's southwest of Columbia in Lexington County, and my parents, we were very very simple. We didn't have a lot. My parents, they both worked in mills, as did my grandparents, and there was also farming that was important. My grandfather, he was this interesting guy that collected a lot of just ephemera and things that people would discard. Whenever you would get rid of your garbage, you would take it to this facility and kind of throw things in, the various containers on your own, and he would kind of see what someone had left and then bring it back, if it was something really neat. His barn was full of these odd objects and old tools.
One man's trash.
Yeah, yeah, and so when I was a kid and I would play in the barn, we would find these things, whether it was I don't know, like an old helmet or an old game or a skate or something, and we would then, my cousin and I, my brother and I, we would play with it. Sometimes it would then kind of take on another form and another life of its own. And as I grew up, and my grandfather was no longer with me, I would still go to his farm and go into the barn to just revisit those memories, and I would see an object that I remember playing with or seeing back then, and it seemed to have a whole other element to me whenever I saw it then, and I decided to start using those in paintings, and you're familiar with those early works.
Well, I was just going to mention the early works that, and how the work is still the same, but still very much different, changed. This grouping of 12 by 12 paintings, each object really is isolated, almost in a sense lonely. Or do you feel that? I notice in this grouping there's only one or so that has any setting for the work of art, that has a shelf or most of them are just sitting almost in infinite space. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why they've changed, or why you're working that way now?
Yeah, it was something that just kind of happened in a strange way. One of the first paintings I did in the series actually had an environment. It was on a shelf, and it seemed to reside in a space. And then the next few paintings that I did, I can't remember if the background was darker or what, but I liked the object sort of emerging from the setting that it was in, and becoming much more neutral, so you could focus on the object more.
You think the objects are lonely?
I'm sorry?
You think the objects are lonely?
I mean, someone could see it that way. I saw it as a way of kind of just focusing on this individual thing that was a portrait of this person, or personified this person. And back to what you were saying earlier about portrait painting, I noticed that I was actually painting the objects much like you would a portrait artist would paint a portrait, because I was like working on the object and then trying to fill in the background, like a portrait artist might brush in some color around a head study that they've been working on.
Well, this particular exhibition is the first time that we have shown studies along with these 12 finished paintings. Is there a particular reason why you're doing more studies? I know in the past, I think you went pretty much directly to each painting. What has caused this?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. In the past, I would just work in my sketchbook, and I would come up with very basic sketches that no one else was really, they weren't to leave my sketchbook. It was just for me to plan out a composition and where things would go, and then I would go straight to the finished painting. But I've always wanted to have another element for the audience to enjoy, and I also wanted to explore other mediums in a more finished way. So last summer, when I was having the residency at the McCall Center, I decided I wanted to try to do a drawing for each painting, and I started out that way, but then it kind of I became impatient and just started to focus on the paintings. But since then, I've decided I wanted to do that. I wanted to make a finished drawing, some sort of color study, which I've been enjoying working on this oil paper that Arch makes, and then doing the finished painting. And in doing that, it's helped me kind of understand the work a bit better. I find that I'm like working more efficiently because I feel like each step is helping me understand what I'm doing, and it's giving the audience another access to another piece in case there's someone that wants to take a piece home. There's different price points, and I think it helps inform the work better. Seeing where it all came from and ended.
Tell me a little bit about your influences, your inspirations. I know your grandfather in that particular direction, your father in that direction, of course, but inspiration as far as looking at other artists or having conversations with other artists.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my biggest inspirations are just people in a way, like conversations you have with others, whether they are an artist themselves connected to the arts or just someone that is just a friend or even someone I just met. I love just interacting with people and getting to know their story. And that kind of like really adds another element to me as an artist because I see how everyone's story is still connected in some way, even if we're so different. And I find that really inspiring, and I just love the just talking, getting to know people. And in terms of artists that inspire me, it's really across the board, from the classics, from Renaissance and Baroque artists like Caravaggio to Jan van Eyck, up to impressionist and contemporary artists that are working in abstract manner or photorealist fashion, pop artists. I could list several artists, but yeah, I mean, I find inspiration in many things, but I think that it's just people and conversation that really excite me.
Talk about, is there, we touched on this a little bit, but the symbolism within the work, is there something hidden that we are not all supposed to be attuned to, or is it up to the individual who's viewing the works to find their own symbolism, or you keep it from us?
Yeah, no, it's yeah, absolutely. In many of the works, I have a lot of fun sort of what I say is just stitching elements of symbolism into the work, and it might be something that the audience member would never see or understand, but to me it adds a level of interest to keep me engaged in the work, that has this sort of thing that's underlying, that helps build the story. The works that I've done in the past that were larger format, had more elements and complex compositions, I would stitch certain things in to add some story. But with this particular body of work that you have at the gallery, most of it is pretty straightforward in terms of the object. Whether it's like the torch behind you, that was an object that someone had given me. And I just thought it was a beautiful object, and they told me the story of how they had come into owning this, and I decided to.
It's my favorite painting in the exhibition.
Thank you. There's one painting that you have in the show that does have more elements, and it's the one that you referred to earlier that has an actual table and a setting, and there's some cloth, and I decided to have some sort of fun with that one and kind of paint this red velvet with it. My parents had both worked in a velvet mill that was in Leesville.
We're going to walk over there so you can see the painting.
Yeah. But yeah, so this particular work, I tried to add more elements of things like that, with the velvet being something from my past, something that my parents had made, artwork from Renaissance period. A lot of times artists might have a red hat on to sort of symbolize that they were an artist, if you saw that, and artwork, or even in life. One of my favorite painters, Jan van Eyck, there's a painting of his that is believed to be a self-portrait, and he has a red turban. So I thought it was kind of fun to kind of add all these different elements to generate this symbolism. But yeah, there are things that most people aren't going to know about, but they keep me really engaged, and I think it adds another layer of interest.
Terrific. I was, as people view these paintings, Chris, obviously there is nostalgia. And do you think that, well, let me put it this way. Someone said to me yesterday, my favorite is the lava soap because I use it. And someone else has said, I used Strawberry Quick when I was a kid. Is it okay that people can identify these to you or to themselves in that way?
Yeah, I mean, to me that's important. So in my work, typically the objects are painted life-size because these are objects that the audience members have probably engaged with in some way. So they're familiar with holding or interacting with it in some tactile form. So I want it to be relatable in that regard. But then also in terms of the nostalgia, I mean, I think that's fabulous because I relate to it in some way. Like this Sweetheart Soap, this was something that I remember seeing when I was younger, again in my grandparents' collection, and I was really excited about it. Well, I guess it was maybe 2 weeks ago, I was at someone's home, and they had seen that work, an image of it, and they told me a story of them growing up and having that brand of soap in their home, and how it was not, they couldn't use it. It was like in the guest bathroom, and it was just for appearance because it was too pretty to actually wash your hands with. And I think that there's this really nice sort of engagement that happens with the audience member and their own personal nostalgia that is their own story. It's not my story. And I love hearing their take on it. I don't want to spell things out for anyone, but I love hearing their story. It's really exciting to me.
I think that's terrific. Talk to us a little bit about the technique. How do you, we spoke a moment ago how you're now doing some studies, but how do you approach this kind of painting?
Okay.
What are you're using oil paint on wood panels, and
Yeah. So I work from life. So each of these objects are things
my
that
next question is: do you work from life? Do you work from photos?
So I work from life. I have used photo reference in the past, just to kind of help compose compositions, but also like with digital photography right now, it's so high resolution. You could have an image and zoom in and see detail that maybe you couldn't, see whenever I'm sitting in my chair looking at the still life image on the box. But this particular work that you have now in the gallery is all from life. There's no photo reference. I have constructed a box that I fill with fabric, and then I'll put an element that kind of blocks up the object. And this box, I have like it's kind of like a stage in a theater. There's a little area of cloth that kind of hangs down to help control the lighting even further on the objects. I have an LED panel light that illuminates it from one side, and I'll kind of move that around to find the shadow that I want to illuminate a part of the object the best possible way. I start by then doing graphite or charcoal drawing, just kind of choosing what I would like to use. The graphite drawings I think are great, and I start by doing that, and then I'll take that and use various papers to actually make a transfer of that onto the other paper, the oil paper that I use that Arch makes. So it starts with a drawing. All the problems that need to be corrected in the painting, the proportional problems are corrected in the drawing, and then that image is then used as a transfer to the oil paper, and I do that with an oil paint technique that you use to transfer, and then that's created and explored with color. And then when I feel that that's complete and I want to carry it forward into the painting, then I'll take that same transfer technique that I described, and then I'll transfer it to a panel and work on it from there. I might have to change the scale of it a little bit, so that's where the computer might come into play, because for your show in particular, I was a little limited on my end because of paper and shipping and everything right now. So I was doing the drawings that are, I think they're 11 inches square, because there were 11 by 14 sheets of paper I had. So I would tear it down to be a square of 11. The Arch oil paper was in a pad of 9 by 12. So I would tear that down to be a square of 9 by 9. But then the panels were 12 by 12. So I had to kind of scale things up and down a little bit. But that's the basic technique. I paint in oil. The final products are on panel. I find that the oil, I get more detail off of a panel than a canvas, but I do enjoy working on canvas. It's just these are on panel, and I just use traditional oil paint and traditional oil paint techniques.
I'm wondering, is there anyone out there who's joining us who might have some questions? Anything happening? Yes, no? Our good friend Barbara's watching us, Chris.
I see that. Yeah, but that's trying to think if there's anything I can tell you else about the technique. That's pretty much what I've done. It's just working from life. I have a simple setup in my studio that's just essentially one light on the still life objects, and then some overhead lights.
You can keep that consistent light when you're in the studio at different times of day and different days.
Yeah.
How about, you must use some rather small brushes.
I use a variety of brushes. from different sizes. But yeah, I do have some pretty small brushes. And what's most important about whatever brushes you're using is to keep them very clean and take good care of them. So I've invested in some good quality brushes from a company in California called Chacal, and they have some nice detailed brushes. And then Rosemary and Company has some nice brushes, and just take great care of them. And one of my favorite painting tools that I actually use is a kneaded eraser. And many of you use this in drawing, but I actually use it in oil painting because you can shape it and get it to a point and actually kind of wipe out an area if something's gotten a little too out of line.
Yeah, I've needed an eraser myself occasionally.
Yeah.
Well, that was a bad pun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Like
we're getting
some
some questions.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one. Julie Friedman. You know Julie. Chuck's
Yep.
wife. And
Hey,
Julie,
Julie.
and he said, hi, Chris. How long does a painting take to complete?
Yeah. Well, hey, Julie. Say hey to Chuck for me too. Miss you
By
guys.
the way, we're talking about another wonderful artist here in the gallery, Charles Basham.
Yeah. Great painter. Great pastel artist. And Julie's a good painter herself. So the paintings take, oh goodness, some of them, depending on how complex the object is, will take considerably longer. Several of these in the show that are hanging out would take approximately maybe 3 weeks, and that's from the drawing, the color study phase, to the finished product. So, you could kind of average a week each, but if there's writing, like a label involved, it becomes much more complex. Like there's one in the show that has a label and a lot of writing, and I worked on that one off and on for about 2 months or so. Yeah, this Ivory took actually that one didn't take as long as the other one called Silver Star Honey. The Ivory one I was able to make at the McCall Center, and I think I may have spent a little over a week on that one. But I was just at the McCall Center painting, almost all day, every day when I was there. But yeah, so depending between on the object, I could spend somewhere between, let's say 2 weeks up to 2 months on these. Yeah. I think that there was another question above Chuck.
Chris, with my eyesight, it's taking me a moment to find them.
Yeah, that's fine. There's one from Toll Reg about my favorite painting in this collection. That's a tough question because I love them all, but there's elements about them several of them that I really, I'm happy with how they turned out. The one behind Jerald of the blowtorch is one that really excited me whenever I was working on that one. The red on the handle was just something that I found really beautiful. On the inside of the handle is red, on the outside it was just black color. But it was just this beautiful crimson compared to the rest of this, the brass and the steel on this. And I loved this. There was this color of this violet that was kind of picked up in the shadow. So that was one that I really enjoyed working on. But the other one that we showed earlier that I called Fractured Beauty, that has the broken mug on the velvet. And that was the second to last painting I finished for the show. That one really excited me because I was kind of working on some new things. I was trying some different techniques, and it really, I was very proud with how that one turned out, and it was a lot of fun. What's your favorite, Jerald?
Well, without doubt, Chris, the torch. And again, it's partly because I love the object and its beauty, but also I remember having an uncle who had exactly like this.
Mhm.
Um, Again, you know, the nostalgia comes into play for all of us.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And what's funny about that painting is I was working on that one. We'll see, like before the COVID-19 pandemic kind of hit us hard in March. I've been painting and working towards this show. So I was kind of working on that one off and on with some other things before March. And then in March, I said, all right, I need to finish this. And I'd been kind of fighting with it back and forth. And then I don't know what happened. It was like one day in like maybe an hour or 2 hour period, it just finished itself, it seemed. It's like I set it on the easel and I said, all right, I got to wrap this up. And it was just crazy how fast it all happened. It was done. So
You and I have talked about that many times in the past when we've worked together to design the installation of an exhibition here at the gallery, and how it'll sometimes just happen, just almost by accident.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's another few questions I see, Jerald. There's one from Ellen Lee Klein. Hey Ellen Lee, it's good to see you in the chat room. She asked, have I done many multiple object compositions, and what were they like? I've done a few in the past. One in particular that I had in Jerald's last show had this old, there were two Morton salt containers, and a butterfly was flying above them, and there was a table they were on, and the circle of salt. Like I played into a lot of the shapes and the symbolism and everything to kind of create a narrative and a story. It's like I was saying earlier, I was stitching all these different symbols together to kind of create this fun sort of painting that I really was excited about. And I would like to get back into doing some things like that once this body of work is, I think I'll always do these kind of paintings because I enjoy them, but I'm excited to kind of like turn to the next chapter and maybe plan out some more things.
You ever consider making larger paintings or considerably larger paintings?
I don't know about considerably larger, but yeah, I'd be interested in kind of getting back to like I've done before, Jerald, something that's like.
Well, remember is maybe 3 by 2 feet.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Anyone talking?
Yeah. I see Barbara Burge has a question. Hey, Barbara, it's good to see you there.
Well, that's right. They could. I can say hi to them too, can't I?
Of course. Yeah, so Barbara is asking if we could talk about selecting your subjects. That's a great question, Barbara, and in many ways, it's like the subject has selected me sometimes. Like I'll go to
Chris, we have a visitor that has just come.
Oh my goodness.
One of my most important collectors. Her name is Sophie.
Yeah.
She
Oh,
has
that's
just
great.
come through the door to say hello. Okay, so thank you, girl. Thank you.
That's nice.
I love this dog.
No.
Okay, sit, girl, sit.
Okay, back to Chris.
Well, I guess so. Yeah. So back to what Barbara was saying.
Sorry for the interruption, Barbara.
Yeah, it's fine. So it's like the subject kind of selects me sometimes. Like I'll go to an antique store, for example, and just spend hours walking around, and then all of a sudden I'll see something on a shelf, and I say, "Oh, that's gorgeous. I have to paint that," and I'll pick it up and I'll bring it home. But I might not paint it for a year or so, and it'll just sit on a shelf in my studio and just kind of occupy space and time with me. And then after we've gotten to know each other for a while, I realized, wait, I can use that in this composition, and so that happens. But then sometimes I select the objects, like in this show, where I knew that I wanted to paint that sweetheart soap and that dish because it was like this important memory, and I knew I wanted to do that. There were little things like that I knew that I needed to do that I did select. But sometimes it just happens, and it's really really interesting. Yeah.
Chris, if you were, I know most of these objects have been very personal to you and come from family heritage, but have you ever considered or have you ever made commissions?
Yeah, actually, I have. I've done a couple commissions, and they've all been really rewarding experiences. And I'm, open to that again in the future. It's
Would it have to be an object that would be of particular interest to you?
yeah. I mean, it would be something that kind of would have a little bit more of a like
Guess who's trying to join the conversation?
yeah. Yeah. But it would be something like where maybe I would naturally want to paint that object in itself, versus like if someone came to me and said, "Hey, would you?" I can't come up with a good example right now, but would you paint, my brand new, sports car? Like, well, I don't really paint a sports car, but I've had some wonderful experiences with doing commissions, and the thing that I enjoy most is the story. Like we did one together, Jerald, with this one lady, and she was having a painting made for her husband as a secret painting for their wedding anniversary, and he collected certain things, and she told me the story about how he started his collection, and wanted to make this painting to kind of add to the collection, a painting of one of his objects, and it was just such a wonderful, wonderful memory. So, yeah. So.
Great.
Oh, I see. Hey, Reagan.
I was just going to say, you see who's on here, Reagan Wish.
Yeah, hey,
Hi, Reagan. Tell hello to your sister and your parents.
Yeah.
And
So,
Reagan asks, she just wanted us to know it was her.
Yeah. I'm delighted to see that Reagan's here.
Someone, I can't read this very well. Marissa?
Yeah, Marissa Pascucci's got a question. She says,
Go
do
ahead,
you have
Chris.
any tips to share about teaching classes virtually from the experiences at the McCall Center? Yeah, so over the past, since March, I've done some classes at the McCall Center with teaching online, and it's been great. I did a few that were all age classes. I did one that was just for little kids. And then a couple of weeks ago, I did a summer camp that was all week long, and it was all done virtual. I guess my tips, that Marissa asked about is just investing. If you're doing it from your own home studio, just invest in good quality camera equipment. And you may have to get some sort of capture card to get the feed into your computer. But just have like creative angles and try to be engaging. I'll show you a little quick drawing. Whenever the kids and I were doing we did a superhero drawing workshop, and I tried to get them to think of like drawing themselves as a superhero. So I did like my basic one in the beginning, and then the kids and we did one together. And kids are incredibly creative, as we all know, and they pretty much designed what the superhero would be, which was this lizard superhero with a spider sidekick. It was a great experience. But yeah, if there are any artists watching this and are interested in offering any online classes, it's definitely a worthwhile experience. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any about that directly. Looks like we got some more questions, Jerald.
All right.
So Julie this time, not
much
Chuck.
better at operating this equipment than I am, Chris.
Yeah. So Julie Friedman is asking, do I ever paint free, loose, and wild? Oh, that's that. Okay. Do you have such control over painting skills? I admire them so much. Thanks, Julie. What's interesting is in the past, I've often tried to get looser in my painting style and painting technique. And every time I try to get looser, I end up getting tighter. It's just the strangest thing. It's something I just can't get away from. I've actually tried to like do something where like I'm not actually using brushes. I'm using like plastic spoons, or instead of using nice sable brushes, I'm using hog hair bristle brushes, and I just end up going back to this more detailed approach. Who knows? That might change at some point. I might, kind of loosen up a little bit, become more energetic. But that's kind of how things have gone.
Well, more people are joining us.
Yeah, I see. I see Reagan has a question. Torch,
And I see that all the wishes are watching us, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Reagan. Oh, here we go. I see that Lauren Piedmont has a lovely question. What effect?
She's a lovely lady.
Yeah. Lauren is asking, what effect did quarantine have on your studio practice and approach to sharing your work? So whenever our quarantine period had begun here, it was obviously all very scary for everyone. But I took it as kind of a blessing in a weird way. I know that sounds strange, but I saw it as an opportunity to stop what I normally was doing, the everyday thing that I would normally do, and doing it in the same order. It was a way to like forcibly be stopped and pause and think about how I'm going to actually do the next thing. And it did definitely change my approach to things. I spent more time, I slowed down. I spent more time in my sketchbook. I spent more time kind of reading and kind of planning out what I was going to do with the work. Before quarantine actually happened, I had actually invested in really nice studio lighting and some other materials and panels that it just so happened, if I had done that, 2 weeks later, I wouldn't have been able to get the shipping done because everything kind of stopped. I got sidetracked for a second. But no, it gave me an opportunity to slow down and stop and reflect on things and just have fun, because sometimes I just take myself too seriously. Maybe we all do. We were getting groceries one day, and I decided I like cupcakes and I like beautiful paintings by Wayne Thiebaud, and I want to make my own. I've always been interested in doing this, and I've never given myself the time to do this. I'm just going to do it. So we bought some beautiful cupcakes, and I picked out one, and I said, I'm going to paint this cupcake, and just for the fun of it. So like I described earlier, I set the cupcake up, I did a drawing, then I transferred the detailed drawing to the oil paper, and then did the oil studies, and then did the final oil painting on panel, and it was just great. I don't know if that answered the question well enough, but it definitely caused me to just stop and take the time to do the things that I've been wanting to do.
I was gone with the camera to see the other works, but I'm back.
Yeah, that's okay. It's good. Yeah, but the cupcake was, and that's something I think I'm definitely going to explore again soon. Or those fun dessert paintings, because that was just a really nice break, and then I kind of put that aside and then worked on the rest of the works for the show, the 12-inch square pieces.
Terrific. Okay, everyone. Chris, I want to thank you very much. Thank everyone that joined us. If you have more questions, please call us at the gallery, email us. We'll be glad to help you out. Chris's exhibition opened officially today and will be on view till the third week in September. We are open, we're allowed to be, so don't hesitate to come in and see us, and email us. We can send you excellent visual images of all the paintings. Anything else you want to say, Chris? at the moment?
Yeah, this was a fabulous experience. Kind of like what we were saying earlier about how the quarantine has caused us to do things differently. I think if we look at it as a way to kind of pause and change our day-to-day approach, it might help us kind of find different footing through everything. And this video has been a wonderful opportunity for that. I think it's great to see everyone here and to have this conversation whenever we couldn't actually be together in the same room. So this has just been a real treat. And I thank you all for being part of this and
Well,
making it what it is.
I want to say thank you to you, Chris, for being you.
Thanks, Jerald. It means a lot.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.